seeing like a loss of the ego and a connection to things around me. So I was sitting against this cliff and I was watching everyone. We had been lost in the canyons for hours, and some people were interacting and some people were doing their own thing, and everyone was just happy and laughing. And that's back when I said that's the closest thing I've come to a hallucination, right? Like everything was still real. It was real things in front of me. That was really a cactus right there, but everything was like super bright and super vivid. And I just remember feeling like nobody had any like huge responsibility, right? Like I wasn't responsible for anything and they weren't, and words weren't necessary, and everything was just okay, like harmony. Does that make sense?
Wow. And that's what I was trying badly to describe to Sir. But so it wasn't just that, we read each other's minds. It was like everyone that was there on acid was connected on some deep level. And everyone who wasn't on acid was not connected into it. And like it was when you said there was no need to talk, that's what sort of triggered my memory. We barely spoke, had to speak. We just like look and nod and shit. And
yeah, and it's not that like I knew their thoughts or what they were thinking specifically,
no,
but like I just remember knowing that everybody was like very happy and very carefree, and I just remember like having a lot of like gratitude and peacefulness and happiness, and just like there's no need for words. And even the people who were interacting, they weren't even having like conversations, right? Like they were just, it looked like they were both playing in the same puddle of colors or something, you know, like everybody was just having a good time separately but together.
everyone was just experiencing.
Yeah, like separately and together all at once.
I don't know if this is quite the same thing because it didn't have anything to do with drugs. I was raised.
Well, we do have that too.
I don't know.
Your non-drug spiritual experience.
Okay. I used to go around saying I'm super religious, but I don't believe in any of these gods. So one of the many strange things about me is that I was raised being told and believing. I still believe it in a poetic sense. Like it's meant in a poetic sense, kind of. Not really sure how to describe it. That my family were like a thing. We're a thing itself. And as new generations get born, it's just iterations on the same thing. So like everyone, probably not so much the people that married in the family, but people born in the family and raised in the family, most of us feel like we're one thing, and we're just modifications and iterations on the one thing, sort of webbing out through time.
Okay. So
so when we get together, I feel like I have the feeling like I'm them, not like their personality, but like I'm the same thing they are.
Yeah.
Does that count? I don't know if that counts.
I because I know exactly what you're saying, I think we can count it because it is.
I think so.
Yeah. I think it's kind of this. I wouldn't know because I'm not there yet, but I think it's kind of the same feeling grandparents get when they see their grandkids.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's been described to me as sort of, oh, there I go.
Exactly. There I am. I was about to say, I've had the same feeling about my family. And I used to think, it's because we came from France. There's only 5 brothers with our last name in the country, or in the world as far as we know, because the name's made up. And then all of my cousins and that came from that. And there's like over 100 of us now. But I know every single one of them because the 5 uncles is all there was with this made up name. And so this, like, I felt like we were the same, not quite the same person, so maybe not to the degree of you, but
Yeah.
that close and connectedness, like we have the same blood, is very, very powerful. Very powerful.
Yeah, so I have that a lot. And like,
It sounds like your culture gave it a name and a way to describe it and understand it, whereas that's just like a weird thought I've had to think myself. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, or it's like built up because we have all these rites of passages and these holidays and these planned get-togethers, and we work together a lot. And
And
um,
they're specific to your family, like you have your own holidays and stuff. Is
I
that what
mean,
you mean?
I don't know if there's like some of them are just kind of general that like people don't celebrate anymore. Like we have a harvest holiday that's not Halloween, right?
Yeah,
But it's
okay.
not like we invented that. That used to be a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's
that's
just
what
not.
most of that is. It's stuff that I don't think we invented any of them. I think we just picked it up along the way, and we have a hard time letting things go once they get integrated.
Yeah. Do you know, bit off topic, but just throwing it out there while I'm thinking about it, because otherwise I never ask you. So, as far as what you've already said publicly, about certain structures within your culture and beliefs and traditions and all that stuff, um, I would love to have a one-on-one one time, just for my own, even on offline, um, and pick your brain as much as you're willing to share about your culture, because it's
Oh,
absolutely fascinating.
as far as that's
Uh,
concerned, I'm more or less an open book. So
oh,
I'm not trying to
sweet.
hide any of that.
Yeah. Um, I mean, there's other, there'll be follow through benefits to that conversation, because I know a lot of people think that you make that shit up.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I had I don't know. Do you know who Fabio is? Pixie might know
which
Fabio.
one?
Not the model, the guy that was he used to hang around, would pop into Brojo's every once in a while, but it's been quite a while since he's been in there last.
No, I don't think I do.
He does the racing show with Simon Simos.
Oh, yes, I do know him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did an interview with me like that a while ago, and he he said something about he thought he was talking to a member of the Illuminati. It's out there somewhere. He had to cut it short because he was trying to keep it to an hour, and then it kept on, I guess, spiraling out of his control.
Yeah. Oh, dude, and I'll have to do it at a time that you have more than an hour, because I will need more than an hour.
Oh well,
Uh,
it's up to you, but I'm free all of today.
oh, excellent.
I'm going to be at my house here.
It's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I heard Brojo's live, so you can go check that out too. I had some random thoughts, like stuff I have to do this week, and I was wondering, should I try to tan the palms of my hand? I was sitting here just now thinking about how like the palms of your hand never really get like, a whole lot of sun exposure. It's like, should I like actively go out like with my hands upturned to tan the palms of my hand? I don't know. Weird random thoughts. And then there's all that, and very psychedelic, very yes. What are we talking about? Oh, things I have to do this week. Okay, so yeah, it looks like get to work, get to work, get to work, and then Monday, I need to hit a recycling center and a food bank. Step, yeah, that's my prerogative. Recycling center, food bank in no particular order, and hopefully this dude comes to work on the fucking car. Yeah. Yep. That's about that. Mm-hmm. I'm waiting for my laundry to dry, and I'll have to take a shower pretty quickly here. So, very shortly, we have another tab share here. This article possibly contains original research. Please improve it by verifying the claims made and adding inline citations. Statements consisting only of original research should be removed. August 2022. Abrahamic religions. In Abrahamic religions, a non-anthropomorphic God is supreme power behind and beyond all things. God is described as incorporeal, omnipotent, eternal, omniscient, omnipresent, omnibenevolent, and usually described as outside of time, a created reality as well. God is considered to be the creator of the universe and the source of morality, which can be known to all by the natural law. Sometimes this God is described in negative terms. See also apophatic theology. Apophatic theology. Other times in positive terms. See also cataphatic theology. And which terms any sect uses depends on their point of view concerning God. God also tends to have many names and titles among each sect, whether in Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, among others. Buddhism. In Theravada Buddhism, nirvana is ultimate reality. Nirvana is described in negative terms. It is unconstructed and unconditioned. In some strands of Mahayana Buddhism, the Buddha nature, or Dhammakya, is seen as ultimate reality. Other strands of Buddhism reject the notion of ultimate reality regarding any existent as empty, sunyata, of inherent existence, svavada, svabhava, 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 is that how I'm supposed to say that? Citation fucking needed. But how do I say it? Okay, what do I want to... Svabhava. Right? Is that correct? I don't know. Right. Inherent existence. Any existent is empty of inherent existence. Okay. In Confucianism in Chinese theology, and general Chinese theology, Tian connotes the highest principle of creation, monistic in both structure and nature. This conception of Tian evolved over time. In the earliest Confucian canonical texts, such as the Analects of Confucius, Tian was transcendent, universal creator, and ruler, similar to that of the Hellenistic philosophies and Abrahamic traditions. During the Neo-Confucianism of the Song dynasty, Tian became the will and the embodiment of the natural order of things, the universal principle guiding the cosmos. Hellenistic philosophy. There have generally been ideas of an impersonal supreme force or ultimate reality in Hellenistic philosophy, such as among the Stoics, whose physics pantheistically identify the universe with God, rationally creating the cosmos with his pneuma, ordering the cosmos with his logos, and destroying the cosmos in ekpyrosis. Ekpyrosis, only to start the process in rebirth all over again. Among the Platonists of all generations, the highest reality as form of the good or the one an ineffable and transcendent first principle that is both the origin and end of all things. Hinduism. In Hinduism, Brahman connotes the highest universal principle, the ultimate reality in the universe. In major schools of Hindu philosophy, it is the material, efficient, formal, and final cause of all that exists. It is the pervasive, genderless, infinite, eternal truth and bliss which does not change, yet is the cause of all changes. Brahman, as a metaphysical concept, is the single, binding unity behind diversity in all that exists in the universe. Representation. According to Didowski, the concept of ultimate reality is difficult to express in words. Poetry, mythology, and art, paradox or contradiction is often used as a medium of expression because of the contradictory aspect of the ultimate reality. According to Mircea Eliade, ultimate reality can be mediated or revealed through symbols. For Eliade, the archaic mind is constantly aware of the presence of the sacred, and for this mind all symbols are religious. Relinking to the origin, through symbols, human beings can get immediate intuition of certain features of the inexhaustible sacred. The mind makes use of images to grasp the ultimate reality of things because reality manifests itself in contradictory ways and therefore can't be described in concepts. It is therefore the image as such as a whole bundle of meaning that is true, faithful, trustworthy, Eliade says. The sacred is equivalent to a power, and in the last analysis to reality, the sacred is saturated with being. Sacred power means reality and at the same time enduringness and efficacy. The polarity, sacred profane, is often expressed as opposition between real and unreal or pseudo-real. ... Thus it is easy to understand that religious man deeply desires to participate in reality, to be saturated with power.
Keep it real, homies.
Ah, yes, ultimate reality. This is just like a random Wikipedia article. I don't remember who shared these with me or when. They were just on my watch, read later in my tabs. Yeah, 12:23 p.m. Almost time. Almost time. No, it's not what we were going for. Okay. Well, this isn't going to work, and I don't know what to tell them. Looks like Tubi's got us on lockdown now. Alright. Well, fuck it. Yeah, too many choices to make, too little time to make them. Don't know where in the hell.
But look, we're dealing with a lot of weird people on the internet here.
In his infinite wisdom, the man's been around. He knows some shit, okay? I mean, it's a thing. What do we got? Ooh, Pine Creek is live on Pine Creek Politics. We'll watch that until we end the stream here soon, shortly-ish. Maybe. Yeah, well, yeah, I actually have to, so yeah. Is the internet just sufficiently squirrely that we will not do any of these things? I don't actually have to be over here. I can move over here and see if I can.
Yeah, or let's just say versus whites for the sake of this argument.
Well, careful.
Oh, versus white for the sake of this argument. It's starting off spicy.
Now, if we're talking about African Americans and we're going to compare apples to apples, African Americanism is a culture, not a race.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
You're right.
yeah, you could say that. Okay.
So let's compare cultures to cultures.
Okay, let's compare cultures to cultures. So you would say that, but you'll grant that there are disparities between African Americans and other
Yes.
cultures.
Yes,
in
definitely.
American society.
Definitely.
Okay. And so you also would agree, or would you agree that if the situations were flipped in Bizarro World, like Seinfeld, that if things happened in the exact opposite way and Africans settled in the United States, imported slaves from Europe, would you agree that white Americans, European Americans would have landed in the exact same position?
Nope.
And why?
Because it depends on the culture.
So why is the culture the way it is? What explains
That is the million-dollar question. Why is the culture? Because what you've just proposed is that there's a reason why African Americans have those stats that you just mentioned, and you're proposing the reason is because of the historical narrative of slavery, and I would say that's definitely part of it. But let's make this really controversial. I would say that more recently, Asian Americans have been persecuted more so than African Americans in the history of the United States. They were put in basically slave camps. More recently than the African Americans were slaves in the 1800s. I'll also mention the Jews. You're not supposed to say "the" in front of Jews, but I'll do it. I'll also mention the Jews. More recently than the slave trade of America, the Jews in World War II were subject to the Holocaust. And maybe not just in the United States, but all across the world, they have excelled relatively to other cultures. So that tells me that this has to do with culture and values, and not of course there's external pressures, but there are cultures out there that have overcome these negative pressures. Now, does that make sense?
That makes sense, but what follows from that, Doug?
What follows from that is some cultures are better than others, and that if you're in a culture that's failing, you should be sad and don't repeat the mistakes of your parents.
See,
this is what a liberal hates to hear. Not a liberal, a leftist hates to hear, because it blames them.
Yeah, it says
it feels icky,
and that's fine. But I don't think I don't think it has explanatory power, because it has no. So some cultures just are worse. Society had nothing to do with.
I didn't say that. Did not say that.
Let's get to that point then, because we have to go to the why.
Because
why is black culture the way it is?
So why don't you start? Why do you think the African American culture is different than, let's say, the Jewish culture?
I would say that you have one of three options to explain why any culture is the way it is: nature, nurture, or a mixture of both. If you say nature, then they're somehow genetically inferior.
I actually don't. Just as a side note, but the older I get, the more I don't separate those two, nature and nurture. Because if you're a materialist, naturalist, determinist, is there really a difference between nature and nurture?
I'm not a materialist or a naturalist.
Okay, well, I am. So then but anyhow, go ahead. I'm just letting you know. I'm not sure if I.
Okay.
I think pragmatically I do, but
let's see if I can reword it. It's either a result of a broad history that political scientists can use data sets of vast swaths of people, and it has predictive power. It's either something in that realm, or it's something inherent to a people group, or it's a mixture of both.
Okay, and what conclusion have you come up to?
I'm with the political scientists that say it's that when we're studying large groups of people, this is why I say individual responsibility is pointless. The material conditions of society that a group of people faced are.
So then how would you explain the two persecuted cultures, one excelling, one not? How would you explain that?
I would say that while what our Jewish brothers and sisters have faced has been very bad. I know you're smiling. I see it.
That thought popped my head. I feel
you're like, oh, I'm getting a leftist to say the Jews haven't had it that bad.
Yeah.
In comparison to, and same thing with Asian Americans, you can look at the last 50 to 100 years, but unless you can take this thing back generations upon generations, and even in the 1980s, I would say the urban, the post-industrial.
Sorry, I'm distracted. My wife's trying to take my money. Just open up my wallet and take out what you think is fair.
I gotta replace it now.
I don't have any 20s.
I have a theory about something to do with your wife, but I won't.
You have a theory about my wife?
Oh. Yes, I do.
Do you want to hear this? Okay, so what we were talking about. So basically, before I got interrupted, you were saying that the Jews haven't suffered as much as the African Americans.
Just in a different way. I like that.
And the Asians haven't suffered as much as the African Americans, and the Native Americans, they haven't suffered as much as the African Americans?
Because of the urban, post-industrial Reagan era policies, I would say it would be very different when comparing these two groups.
Okay, so your explanation is that they've had it worse.
I would say it's nature, it's nurture, or it's both, and I say it's nurture. You can say nature, but that I wouldn't want to go there. Or you could say it's both.
Why wouldn't you want to go there?
I still don't.
I don't believe. Let me, for the record, I don't believe that one race is. The thing is, in order to have racism and races, in order to have racism, you have to have races. And it's a spectrum, right? There's no,
sure,
especially nowadays with interbreeding of us Homo sapiens animals. What if it were true that one race, in quotes, is genetically superior in certain aspects of society? Would you want to believe that?
If it were true, I would want to know that it was true. I wouldn't want to deny the truth.
Would you support research to find the answer to that one? Or would you rather say maybe we shouldn't do research on that?
Well, Charles Murray wrote this book called The Bell Curve back in the 90s and tried to establish such a wild notion as the fact that Africans were somehow genetically inferior. And the worst part of that was, like, as a result of that analysis, if that had been true, which it's not true, I can give you guys a link to a video that will completely debunk everything he's saying.
Well, the thing is, people always view it as, let's say, blacks are inferior to whites, but it could be the other way around, right? In some areas. Like, for example, I heard a guy the other day, a guy with dark skin say, I think he was African American, say something like, it is not in the DNA of Africans to build ships, go to other lands, and take people as slaves. It's not in their DNA. He said this, not me. He said that, but white people have a genetic disposition to conquer, to take, or whatever. What if he's right? And that would make Africans superior, at least in some people's view, superior to the white person, because they don't have this evil conquering mentality. They're morally superior.
Morally superior.
Yeah.
But they would use that in the way that historically many white supremacists have used the European conquest of the world and colonialism as a way to say that white heritage was more, they may have been less morally pure, but they were more ambitious. They were the true conquerors and the kind of.
But you would be against that whole idea of, let's say, black people being morally superior over white people.
Yeah, I would say that if you go back far enough, we're all just one. If you look at the genetic variants of different people, somebody who is in Africa, like right now, may have closer looking genetic blueprint than me and you.
Yeah, I agree with you here, but I bet you anything there's some people who are going to listen to this and hear this, and they might not say this out loud to their friends, but they're saying, yeah, I do think black people are morally superior to white people.
And I think that's what conservatives do not like. They feel like leftists or liberals are holding a double standard. And so they're like, you guys just won't criticize the oppressed class of people because you have grouped them as oppressed, you know?
But let's get back to your main point about what best explains certain discrepancies, or what's the better word? Inequalities. Your first answer, I think, was, let's say, comparing Jews with Asians and African Americans. It's because African Americans have suffered more.
Okay. That's not entirely accurate.
Okay, how would you summarize what you said then?
I would say that every culture, or for the sake of this conversation, the social construct of race, so every subgroup within American society has a distinct history, and the distinct history of each subgroup has determined the material conditions of that group today.
Right, but we're trying to explain this inequality with, let's say, African Americans, and your explanation is that the history...
The conditions were different.
Okay,
for African.
But so you wouldn't say worse, just different.
I would say for a longer period of time and worse.
Okay, so my summary was right then. It
was again a mistake.
Okay. So let's say you're right, and we have the conditions were worse for a longer time. Would you expect to see some type of proportionality in the inequality? So let's say one culture, almost everything went great for them, no real main struggles. So we're talking about white people right now, right? In the United States, pretty easy, smooth sailing. African Americans, you would say, would be the worst in terms of struggle against them, obstacles to overcome. Let's say Jews are 50%.
I don't like this.
You don't know like where this is going, because you'll know that it doesn't work. If I'm a numbers guy, right? Let's say we just put the worst type of historical conditions at 100 for African Americans. Where would you put Asians or Jews?
See, I just don't think we can. I don't think we can rank
these are like
oppression like that.
You don't?
You want these?
You just did when you said it was worse.
I don't know how to work.
I said it has explanatory.
But it's a regular phone charger. I know that.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, these are good ones.
Yeah.
No, you said it was longer and worse for African Americans. You ranked them compared to Asians and Jews.
You've caught me here.
There you go. Okay, let's be real and honest with each other.
Not in a like blacks have a 9.7 out of 10.
I know, but hear me out. Hear me out.
Yeah.
If we can rank them, we should see some proportionality if it's all based on society pressures that, well, yes, Asians haven't suffered for as long or as hard as African Americans, but they still have suffered way more than whites. They were put in concentration camps and all that. So we would expect then, based on your hypothesis, that they would have more crime per capita than let's say, white people. But
Yeah,
that's not
but
true.
that this would be a good point if we did not selectively immigrate Asian Americans who are very, very smart. We take the best and the brightest from all these other countries, and we
Okay, but when
compare.
does this immigration start and stop? Like, African Americans were immigrated into this country forcibly.
Yes,
Yeah.
but they weren't immigrated as
So we're
doctors.
Asians,
They were
some Asian
immigrant.
Americans long ago.
We would have to know the percentage of
What you're talking
what
about now is more or less in the last 50 years, right? Or 30 years of immigration through H visas and so forth. And then we take, the very educated. But the same holds true for Africans. We
we
take
would have.
Nigerians, like I said, most educated. We immigrate people into the United States with dark skin who have doctorate degrees and everything. And yet we still see, like when you look at the demographic boxes to check off when it comes to crime, you don't see Nigerian black, Caribbean black. We see black.
Yeah, yeah. No,
So that tells you that the African American culture is taking the import of the immigration from, let's say, well-to-do people, educated people from Africa. They're bringing those averages way down because we got these top people up.
And why is that done?
Yes, that's what we're trying to explain. And you think it's societal pressure, but I'm saying that if it is societal pressure, we should see some type of proportionality in the degree of society, persecution, or whatever you want to call it, and these metrics we're using, like crime, like poverty, like wealth, but we don't.
But the only way we would even know that, we would have to trace back all of the African Americans who live in these urban areas when their ancestors immigrated versus someone who has recently immigrated.
Yeah.
Unless you know when each subgroup, unless they all immigrated at the same time, unless you know each subgroup's
Oh yeah, it's extremely complicated.
History.
It's extremely
Maybe this
complicated.
This could be my dissertation. This could be.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. You should bring me into one of your classes someday. I'll educate your leftist friends. Okay, but in general terms, though, and I know people on the left, they hate simplification. They love to be nuanced and philosophical, but do you understand that if your theory is correct, we should see some type of correlation between societal persecution, suffering inflicted, racism, all that, and crime? The more, the worse, the less there be less crime, less poverty. But we don't see that. We see some of the most persecuted people, i.e., Jewish people, i.e., Asian people, excelling. And, it's not across the board, but it's definitely not in proportion. It's like they are better than whites in crime, better than whites per capita in household income and that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
your theory,
but
I think, doesn't explain that.
But the number only correlate to poverty, and the African Americans' disproportionate outcomes are only good insofar as African Americans are poor. Like, you don't see like LeBron James out there like rioting on the streets. Like,
Right.
it's the same thing that happens in poor Black communities happens in poor white communities.
Yes.
Yes, but there's a larger percentage proportionally
Right.
of African Americans who are poor compared
Right.
to white.
And the question is, why is that? And you say because of the history of oppression, racism, and so forth. And I'm saying if that's true, then we should see more disparities in wealth and in crime in the Asian and Jewish community, and we do not.
Yeah.
Take that to your political professors and see what they say.
No, it's a good point, Doug. I think it's a good point.
And it's a point that any thinking, reasonable human being can come up with on their own. I haven't taken a political science.
Boop 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 bop bop boop bop bop boop 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 skibidi bop 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 skibidi boop bop 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 skibidi boop bop 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 skibidi boop 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 bop a dee bop 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 a dee bop boop doobity beep bop doo bop bop doo shoot doo wop doo wop doo wop doo wop doo wop doo wop shibbity boop bop 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 shibbity boop bop 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 boop doo boo doo 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 shit bop